Hi, and welcome to What's New in Jenkins LTS. My name is Darren Pope. I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. And along with me today, I have Mark Waite. Mark, how are you doing?
Great, Darren. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Here we are, yet again. Has it only been 4 weeks since we did this?
I think
It feels
has
much
only
longer.
been 4 weeks.
Wow, okay. So this, in theory, unless something bizarre happens, is the last of the 2.332 line. Today happens to be the .3, correct?
That's correct.
Well, for people that don't know, how does the whole LTS process work? And, what is a Jenkins LTS?
Sure. So Jenkins long-term support releases are chosen from a baseline of the weekly release. A baseline is selected every 12 weeks, every 3 months, and that baseline then is used for initial backports of issues that might have been in that specific weekly that we don't want to allow to LTS users, and then incremental updates are applied to that every 4 weeks after the initial release for the next 2 months. So month 1, it's .1. Month 2, it's .2. Month 3, it's .3.
And that's it, right? Very simple, very easy. I think I've used that joke before. I'm not going to use it again today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the release notes for the release that came out yesterday at the time we're doing this live. Seems to be pretty short, which is always a good thing for the .3.
It is, and this one's a nice one in that it's not a security release, so there's no advisory associated with it. So it's just got some interesting fixes in it and some component upgrades. They're worth discussing. In particular, a couple of them I think we should discuss because some of them taught me about features that I didn't know existed in Jenkins. So I think let's have some fun having the discussion because finding new capabilities is an interesting outcome.
There were features in Jenkins that you were not aware of.
Exactly. And that was fun. It was a really entertaining thing. Oh, wow, that's novel.
Okay, well, where do you want to start?
Well, so I think that top one of the things that we can see here is that there's a bright red, larger red ball there. That what that says is that was a major bug.
Right, which is this.
Exactly. And so a major bug fix. And what this is reporting, it's actually relatively infrequent that this thing would occur. But when it occurs, it's really
glorious?
kind of ugly. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
It's not a healthy thing. So if someone had adjusted the agent level logging, so you're connecting an agent, and the agent's logging levels, you're adjusting it by command line argument or by other settings so that it's doing logging differently. There were cases where you could deadlock that agent so that it just can't do what needs to be done. You couldn't connect and you were stuck. And so rather than having this class loading problem deadlock you, there's a fix included in this release to avoid it. Again, most people don't see it, but it was an important one to get in there because we certainly don't want anyone to see it.
So I haven't looked at that issue, but was it something like somebody had bumped it down to debug or trace?
Exactly. Somebody had made the logging a little more verbose intentionally, right? They were trying to find problems. And in some of the case that was reported by the submitter was, oh, we had forgotten and left more verbose logging on. And that's another good story to tell that, hey, be careful that you don't enable logging for some analysis purposes and then forget to switch it off because logging's not free.
Say that again.
Logging is not free, right? There is some cost to doing logging, whether it's disk space or traffic or performance. You need to be aware. And in fact, there are things in the Jenkins UI that warn you when you turn on logging for a Jenkins instance at the system level. If you attempt to do too heavyweight a logging, it will warn you and say you could have a serious performance impact on your system overall because you've enabled too much logging. So just be aware of logging.
I'll give you one more free. Hard cold cache.
Hard cold?
Because logging, if you're sending your data out somewhere else, your storage costs are going to go up.
Right. Well,
So,
and that's actually quite a common scenario anymore, right? Is that we like our logs to be immutable, and we for some organizations we accept that we need to hold them for a very long time, and that means costs go up if you dial up the logging excessively. Yeah, good point.
okay. Uh, what else do you want to go through specifically today?
Well, so for me, the upgrade thing there on upgrading Jackson 2,
Yes.
this tells a good story about why Jenkins works diligently now to keep up to date with current dependencies. Jackson had an issue, and those issues caused them to release a new version. It's much easier for us if we take small steps from the dependencies than delay our upgrades to use larger steps. So this one, it's a relatively minor change, but it was important. Hey, let's get it in there just to be sure that we don't get bogus warnings from security scanners. We don't get bogus complaints from other checkers. It's just much simpler to include the thing than worry about it.
Especially if it doesn't cause things to go sideways.
Right. That's it. The benefit there is, okay, the upgrade may have no functional difference for the Jenkins user, and it keeps some piece of some organizations off their backs.
Let's do a hypothetical for just a second.
Okay.
Let's say that when this dependency change came in, the tests started failing that were exercising this.
Right.
What would have been the strategy?
So then what happens is developers in the Jenkins project analyze what changed between the preceding version of the API plugin and the new version, and based on those changes they decide, is there a bug in the preceding version of the plugin, or is the bug in Jenkins core that we need to adapt Jenkins core to something? And we've seen things like that. We just recently had a specific example of that where the tool we use to compile Jenkins core, Apache Maven, had unfortunately a bug in its version 3.8.5. So we've had to stay back on 3.8.4. And the analysis was done. It could have been a Jenkins bug that caused the problem. It turned out we did the analysis. It was actually a Maven bug. And we'll wait for 3.8.6 to be sure that that's fixed, and then we'll upgrade to it.
And that was the dependency tree something in 3.5,
You know,
I think.
I don't even remember the failure, because in my case, I'm actually still using Maven 3.8.5 for my work because my work was unaffected. But Jenkins core could not be built with 3.8.5, and we had to stay on 3.8.4. And when the Maven experts that do Jenkins core development say stay with 3.8.4, we can trust them.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the reason why I was nodding so much there was I was on an online meetup that I was just attending, and I noticed that the presenter was still using 3.8.4, and I was like, well, why not 3.8.5? He's like, well, there's this dependency thing. I went,
Right.
Okay. All right, well, I said, it's not hitting me right now, so I'll just stick with 3.8.5 until it blows up, and if it blows up, then, okay, it's probably that, and I'll go back to 3.8.4.
Well, and what did you just do? You did like the rest of us, listening to communities. You realize, I heard about that, and if I encounter a problem, I know what the step is I need to take to deal with the problem.
Yeah, so I know that I'm walking potentially a thin line
Right.
for what I'm doing, and that's okay. At least I'm aware of it.
Well, and it's actually, I'd call it even intentional, right? It's a very healthy thing to be staying current. Much better that than running some older version and then trying to do a very long step to get to the current.
Yeah. Okay, what else do you want to talk about here? Now, before we go anywhere else, the LTS upgrade guide, I do want to go ahead and show that. Okay. There was nothing. It was
Which is
boring.
Very healthy. We like that.
Very good.
Yes.
Boy, it seems like it's been a lot longer than 3 months since systemd came in.
And thank you for doing those sessions on systemd. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of interest and energy in the change to systemd.
When I was looking at these other items that were here, I thought this last one here was bad encoding of security warnings in French. With special characters. What was this about?
Well, so what happened there is we had some property files that were incorrectly encoded in the source code. And we're actually working something along those lines as part of a localization improvement effort right now that worries about, okay, what do we need to do? There are some relatively special case problems in terms of how Jenkins does localization, and it's pretty easy for us to make mistakes because of that complication.
Got it. I mean, it's not odd to see bad encoding in double byte, such as Chinese or Japanese, but to see it in French.
Right. A
with the
Western
accented.
European language is a little bit surprising. Agreed.
Yeah. And to Master DC, thanks for the comment. You guys are great. Interesting to hear some background info. Yeah, that's what we want to do, is we want to make people aware of what's going on, whether you're with us live or you're watching the replay, just so you can be thinking about, okay, well, like the story that Mark said, they were using Maven 3.8.5, something went sideways, went back to 3.8.4, life goes on. Well, now more people know about that. So,
Right.
Thanks for the comment. Do you want to go through any of these other ones?
I do. A couple
Okay.
of them are fun for me. So the filtering updates in Plugin Manager, that
Okay.
middle one there. So the Plugin Manager has had some really significant improvements. In the last 18 months, it's been through major and significant improvements in UI, in performance, all sorts of things. Well, in one of those improvement steps, unfortunately, we lost the ability for those people who know the exact Maven identifier of the plugin. So for some plugins, that's easy. The Git plugins Maven identifier is Git, no shock. The Git client plugins identifier is Git-client. But for others, it actually can be quite a help. If you know the identifier, to search for it, you would have previously found it. But in the preceding two versions of 2.332, it was not findable with that plugin ID. And so now it is. Now, agreed, it's sort of an esoteric, kind of an interesting corner case, but we want users to be able to use the plugin manager to find their plugins, and we had lost this functionality as one of the accidents.
Okay. Now, are any of these the item you were just talking about?
They are.
Learn something.
That preserve load statistics data for label expressions. Okay, so I run Jenkins agents intentionally across multiple platforms, right? I've got SUSE Linux, I've got CentOS, I've got Debian, I've got Ubuntu, I've got FreeBSD and OpenBSD, I've got Raspberry Pis, and I've got ARM64 on cloud. And for me, I use them because I need to be able to test platform portability. This label expression showing load statistics data was something I wasn't even aware was available. What it lets me do is show me the load on everything with the label ARM64. That means if I've got a Pi that's got that label and a node out on the cloud, they're both included in the statistics for that. And I can see the nice graph that shows me short-term, medium-term, and long-term performance, long-term load on those things. Or the one I could use is, how bad is my load on my Ubuntu machines? Because I think I may have been overloading them. And this thing, okay, that label is, now I can say, I want to know things that are Ubuntu and AMD 64. So Intel-based Ubuntu, because I've got Intel Ubuntu and I've got ARM into Ubuntu. And so with this label expression, and I had no idea this even did that. It's a really cool technique. Oh, I can express something as A and B, or A or B, and it will generate the graph for me, showing me the load statistics for that thing. And yes, it had regressed. That's why this fix is included. We had lost this capability that I didn't know existed.
As an aside, have you tried out Ubuntu 22.04 yet?
I have, and I'm really pleased with it. I just did it a few days ago, and I'm actually running it on my favorite file system. I installed it on ZFS.
Okay, good.
And it really
I was hoping
runs...
you were going to say ZFS.
Yeah. Well, Linux-based ZFS, I'd never had any... Oh, I take it back. I had one experience with it with OpenSUSE that was very positive, and this is my second attempt, and I'm really jazzed. Docker is a great fit for a ZFS file system, so it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Is that pretty much it? I mean, it looks like there were a couple of icon updates and whatnot.
Right. Those were the topics that I wanted to cover. Everything
Okay.
else was not for me particularly noteworthy. Yeah, we chose to do them. They're important enough that we included them, but I don't think our audience is particularly concerned about them.
So now that we've talked about what is to come.
Oh yes. Okay, that's a fun one. So we've got the June long-term support release that will choose a new .1 baseline, right? We'll choose a new weekly baseline, but that weekly baseline has not yet been selected. So I specifically asked if we could be allowed to delay the selection of the LTS baseline so that we could have some additional time to be sure that the UI improvements are really ready. And we've had very good results. Special thanks to Tim Jacombe, to Jan Farachik, to Basil Crow, to Adrien Le Charpentier, to Alexander Brandes for their work on Jenkins Weekly. So we took a 2-week, right now we're at 2 weeks, and we may take yet another week before we select the LTS baseline. Then it'll be after LTS baseline is selection. 2 more weeks, we'll build a release candidate. 2 more weeks after that, we'll release it. So right now, it looks like the June release probably won't be, instead of being June 1, like the calendar initially estimated, will probably be June 22 or maybe even June 29.
So I'm not going to see you for 6 to 8 weeks.
I don't know. I suspect that, see, what's happening here is we're taking the December break a little early. Traditionally, the Jenkins project with 4 12-week cycles, that's 48 weeks. Typical year is 52. We end up with 4 extra weeks at the end of the year that will typically take a break over the holidays. This time, I've asked, could we take a piece of that break, or possibly all of it, in the middle of the year so that we can be sure that June LTS is ready?
Because if you haven't been watching the weekly releases, the UI changes are, how do I say it nicely, drastic?
They are significant. They really
Significant.
are.
That's a better way to say it. Thank you.
They are. Jan and Tim and Alex have been doing amazing things to do changes to the Jenkins UI. It feels and looks very nice, and I'm thrilled with it. I'm really impressed what they've done. And March was already had some UI changes, right? But this June release is even bigger on UI changes. And so if you want to see them early, run the Jenkins Weekly in a little test instance and look at how it feels.
Yep. Let's get this question in here from Ari. Thanks for the update on the last LTS. What's the best way to add a suggestion for a UI change? Community forums, Gitter, join the user experience SIG, all the above. I'll add that extra slash in there. What do you think, Mark?
So let's take those from the back to the front. So the last one, join the UX SIG. Yes, if you join the UX SIG, though, it's assumed that you'll be actively involved in UX development, not just in giving feedback. If what your primary motivation is, I want to provide the feedback, then the Jenkins issue tracker, issues.jenkins.io, or community forums, those are both good. Gitter is also fine. In terms of which one gets the most attention, it depends on which group we're talking to. Most of the developers are looking first and foremost at issues.jenkins.io. But what they're looking for is bugs and regressions primarily, not for suggestions of improvement. If you've got an improvement idea where, hey, I think the UI would be better if it did this or did that, that may be a better discussion, at least to start in Gitter or start in the community forums, and then expand it from there. When you get it settled and get some more consensus, then you could take it to an issue and give a really well-described issue.
So with that in mind, talking about UI improvements, one of the things that we alluded to in this release around the French is it Alex that's doing the translations?
It is, so yeah.
So I believe you have do you have a live stream about that next week?
Well, we've got
or something.
We'll do a Jenkins online meetup. We'll do a webinar next Thursday that highlights this technique that Alex Brandes has led us to experiment. And Alex and I and Bruno Verachten we'll have a native German speaker, a native French speaker, and a fakey Italian speaker in that call. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how CrowdIn Enterprise has donated a license to the Jenkins project and is hosting the service for us so that we can use their facilities to make translation of Jenkins into local language easier. And we'll go through a session. We'll talk about what this means for translators, what it means for proofreaders. So you can imagine there's someone who does the initial translation. Their job is provide good messages in local language. But the developer who maintains something really doesn't speak that language. So they have no way to assess the validity or the credibility of that. It'd be far too easy for someone to put foul words in Japanese into the Git plugin if they're relying on me to read Japanese. It's not going to work. So what we do is we have a translator, and then after the translator, but before a pull request is submitted, we have a proofreader who looks at it, and we hope both translator and proofreader are native language speakers. Then there's a pull request, and as a maintainer, I see the pull request.
It all sounds very simple. And
compared to the old process, it is very simple.
It is very simple. I will say that. So if you are interested in joining up on that webinar live next week, where's the best place for people to follow so they can be notified when that meetup is announced?
So on community.jenkins.io, if they'll search for meetup and or search for internationalization, community.jenkins.io has the announcement on it.
Let's go over there.
Let's go
just
there.
So we can
Good.
show it, because .jenkins.io. And then, there we go.
So in the search up at the top right-hand corner,
Okay.
just do localization or internationalization.
Okay.
That one. Yeah, localization, great.
And then this one, the Jenkins Online Meetup.
Exactly,
Events.
that's the one.
Okay.
And that's announcing it. It gives you a link to where you go to subscribe. You click through that, it'll take you to Meetup. You then say, yes, I want to attend it, and Meetup will send you the information about how to join that call.
Got it. Well, that's good information, because a lot of the people that are on right now I know are, English is sometimes a second language, and, we love having people that are unlike me, which English is my only language.
Well, and that's it's so much better as an experience for users if they can see messages in their primary language. Right? We know most programmers are reasonably comfortable with written English, so they can tolerate the experience if they're shown English language messages, and that's why they do. However, really, it is much more comfortable for a person who is speaking native Russian or speaks native French or Spanish or German if we can show them those messages in their native language. But we need native speakers to help with the translation then.
And that's very, very true. And in fact, I want to go and give a plug for the Jenkins YouTube channel. There are already some videos out there, primarily from, was it UX or was it platform, where you've already discussed CrowdIn a bit?
That's been documentation office hours, actually.
Oh,
where we've
office
gone
hours,
through
okay.
it. Right. So as part of the docs office hours, we've gone through the several steps in doing the setup. And mostly that's exploration. People are welcome to watch it. It's intentionally public. We like that. But the real story there is we hope that this webinar will make it clear to people, hey, this is both easy, simple, and beneficial to them.
And by the way, the next Docs office hours are if you're with us live, in about 5 hours, I think.
Yeah, actually it's about that. We do Docs office hours at 3 a.m. UTC, which is a convenient time for our contributors in India.
Okay. What else do we need to talk about? Now, I think you and I were talking about coming back on to discuss a few other things. And we just haven't gotten around to getting our calendars to look at it. So we will probably be back before the next LTS comes out.
Oh yeah, I think we've got lots of good topics for discussion. If we don't do an internationalization discussion, we can do. There are all sorts of other topics that I think are worthwhile for us to discuss.
So again, the LTS has been pushed back just as a quick thing, for at least 2 weeks and maybe 4, just depending.
Correct.
So instead of it being June 1st, which was the calendar date you had said.
The calendar
before.
date was June 1, right?
Okay.
So I'm reasonably confident that it won't be before June 15, because if we tried to do it June 15, that would mean we would have to push the schedule and reduce some of the steps in the schedule. And for me, that's just a mistake.
That would be bad. Plus, I think around that time is CDCon.
Right. CDCon is June 7, 8, and 9, and therefore I'd rather not be in the thick of final work there right during CDCon.
Right. So we know it's going to push back, and that's okay. So that gives us some time to come up with some other ideas and have people come back and visit us. All right. Anything else you want to talk about today, Mark?
That's it. Thanks, Darren, for your time.
Thank you, Mark, and for everybody else. If you are with us live right now, before you leave, go and give us a thumbs up before you leave. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to CloudBees TV. We have at least 2 videos coming out every week. We also have podcasts coming out on the channel. There's lots of stuff coming out on CloudBees TV. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube things. And we'll see you back probably before the next LTS, but if not, we'll see you at the next LTS in, give me another number, Mark, 6, 7, 8 weeks, somewhere?
6, 8 weeks. Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.